Hello everyone and welcome once again to my channel. I hope that you all are doing well today. Today we're going to be making a super delicious tres leches cake. And if you don't know what a tres leches cake is, it's basically a Hispanic cake consisting of 3 milks. Whole milk, evaporated milk, and condensated milk, and it is delicious. If you've never had it, this is definitely a cake that you need to try. To start, we're going to need all-purpose flour, baking powder, and salt, and you can look at the recipe below for the amounts. Also, we're going to need granulated sugar, and we're going to need eggs. We're going to separate the yolk from the whites. You're going to use both egg whites and yolks, but you need to separate them because you're going to have to fluff or, basically fluff your egg whites. With your hand mixer, you're just going to go ahead and beat your egg whites until they become nice and pillowy, just like this right here. These stiff peaks is what you want for your egg whites. Now you're going to add your sugar to the yolks and you're going to beat them as well until they become nice and fluffy and pale yellow. Okay, at this point I also added 1 cup of whole milk, and I totally forgot to record it, but do not forget to add your cup of whole milk. If you're doing the regular amount, it's only ½ cup. At this point, we're going to sift our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients, and we're just going to combine them together using our hand mixer. And make sure to not over mix this batter. At the end, just finish mixing it up with a spatula. Once our batter is nice and mixed, we're going to add in our egg whites. And the way you're going to do this is that you're going to fold them in. And the reason why you want to fold them in and not just mix them in or beat them in is because you don't want to deflate your egg whites. You want them to hold their shape. So you're just folding it in by cutting through your batter and adding your egg whites in. And again, don't over mix this, just until they're nice and well combined into your batter. Now that my batter is ready, I'm using a half sheet pan and I'm gonna pour in half of my batter. Again, if you're only doing the regular amount for your cake, you're gonna need a 13x9 pan and it'll work perfectly. But for me, I'm using a half sheet pan, again, because I'm doing a 2-layer cake. I'm gonna tap it a couple times and then I'm gonna pop it in the oven at 350 degrees. Okay, so while our cakes bake, we're gonna make our milk syrup. So let's get started with that. Okay, so what you're gonna need for the syrup is evaporated milk and condensated milk. For the condensated milk, I'm using La Lechera brand. That's my favorite brand to use for this cake. And for evaporated milk, I'm using Carnation from Nestle as well. So if you could find these two, it would be great to have these 2 brands. And we're just gonna pour our condensated milk into our container, but I'm gonna end up having to change bowls because the bowl is not gonna be big enough. Of course, you know me, if I don't change bowls at least once or twice during my cooking process, I would not be cooking. But that's what I'm gonna do. Just going to whisk everything together just to get everything nice and well combined. Okay, so my cake is done baking and it took about 22 minutes to bake, and this is what it looks like. Isn't it gorgeous? Okay, while our cake cools, I'm gonna go ahead and make our whipped cream, and I'm using about 6 cups of heavy whipping cream. And I'm just gonna whip that together until it becomes nice and smooth, like heavy whipped cream consistency. Alright, to my heavy whipping cream, I'm going to add 1/4 cup plus 1 tablespoon of powdered sugar. And if you want it to be sweeter, you can definitely add more sugar. I just don't like my whipped cream to be too sweet. But again, you can definitely add more sugar if you want your whipped cream to be super sweet. Now for your whipped cream, you do not want to over whip it because it's just going to become a weird texture. You definitely want stiff peaks, but not overly stiff peaks. I will show you at the end exactly what you want. It'll become nice and pillowy, almost kind of like a little cloud. it's beautiful, it's perfect, and it's so delicious. And this is the consistency that you want for your whipped cream. Look how gorgeous. Okay, moving on to our cakes again. I'm just going to place my cake on my serving plate basically. And I just flipped it over and I removed the parchment paper. And what I'm doing now is that I'm puncturing my cake. I'm puncturing the cake not all the way down so that I can touch the plate. I'm just puncturing it deep enough so that the milk can seep into the cake itself. And you're gonna do this all throughout your cake, both cakes. Now I'm gonna grab my milk syrup and slowly pour it over the cake and wait for the milk to seep into the cake itself. That way it doesn't kind of go overboard onto your serving platter, which if it does, it's totally fine because it's just gonna seep into the cake anyway. But if you wanna have like a clean serving platter, then you don't want it to seep over your cake, but it's okay if it does. And you're just going to slowly do it all over your cake, and make sure that you're touching with clean hands, of course, that you're touching all over your cake to make sure that it's soggy all throughout, because you don't want to have dry spots on your cake. You want your cake to be saturated nice and evenly. Now that your bottom layer is nice and saturated, we're going to move on to the filling in the center. And for that, we're going to add the whipped cream all over the top, and we're going to do this in a thin layer because you don't want your center to be super thick. So just a thin layer of whipped cream, just enough so that the fruit that you're going to put in the center is going to stick to your cake and not just fall out. After your cake is saturated, make sure you chill it for a while. That way, whenever you put your whipped cream on top, your cake is nice and chilled. So your whipped cream does not melt onto your cake. So make sure that you chill it right after you saturate it. Now you're going to apply an even layer of fruit all over your cake. In this case, I'm using cut up pineapple, canned pineapple, but you can use canned peaches, even fresh fruit, blueberries, strawberries, whatever fruit you want to use, you can definitely use it. After you're done with your fruit, you're going to apply another thin layer of whipped cream over your fruit, and just another thin layer. It does not have to be a thick layer of whipped cream, and just spread it out evenly and make sure you cover your fruit up as much as you can, but again, a thin layer of whipped cream. Now you can leave your cake as it is after you do that, but I'm just applying a little bit of a decorative border all around my cake with the whipped cream, just so it doesn't look so too rustic, although this cake is supposed to look rustic, but I'm just applying that decorative border all around my cake. You don't have to do it, by the way. It's just something that I like to do. Once you're done with that, we're going to put the second layer of cake, or the top layer of cake, on top of our fruit and whipped cream mixture. I'm doing it upside down again and removing the parchment paper. And you're going to puncture your cake again, and make sure that you do it gently by holding the bottom of the cake, kind of sustaining it with your fingers. That way you don't squeeze the fruit out from the center, but just puncture your cake. That way you can add your milk right after. And it's going to be the same concept with the milk as you did before. And to do the top of your cake, you're going to put some whipped cream on top, and you're just going to spread it all over your cake in a good layer of whipped cream, because again, that is your top, so you want it to have a good bit of whipped cream. Using your icing spatula, just spread your icing all over the surface of the cake in a nice even layer. Now to top my cake, I'm using fresh raspberries and I'm just putting them all over my cake just for a decorative and tasty design. You don't have to use raspberries, you can use peaches, you can use strawberries, you can use kiwi, whatever fruit that you want. It does not have to be raspberries. Alright guys, now it's time to taste our delicious creation. Isn't that yummy? Right. It's so moist, and I'm sorry to those who don't like that word, but it's moist and creamy, a little bit tangy from the fruit, and it's not overpoweringly sweet. The cake is sweet, but the whipped cream itself is not sweet, so it balances just perfectly. So this is it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed making this Tres Leches cake with me. As you can see, it's super easy, it's just a few steps, but once it's time to put everything together, it's simple. I do hope that you give this cake a try, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.